like
Good
he
afternoon.
is
Good afternoon.
trying to project that they are getting close to accomplishing those objectives. But again, for me, it's still the matter of the supreme leader and the regime change that President Trump has said has to happen before this war is over. So
Oh, we've just lost the line. We've just lost the line to you, but I think that is, it's been great to speak to you. Thank you very much indeed for sharing the details of that conversation, Weijia Jiang from the BBC's US media partner, CBS News, on her phone conversation with President Trump, who, as you can see, is speaking at the moment in Florida. We are listening across to that, and we'll bring you anything significant that is relevant, of course. Robert Moran and Marianne Marsh, our panelists, are still with us. Robert, what do you make of what we've heard there from the CBS journalists on the tone and the messaging from President Trump?
Right. I think we have to back up and look at the military capabilities of Iran as we can observe them today. So the president is talking about the Iranian Navy being essentially gone, and that appears to be true. We have the U.S. has air superiority over Iran, and they don't appear to have much in the way of an air force or air defense. And so those are two objectives that have been achieved. And that's, I think, what you're going to hear the president talk about. So their offensive capabilities are clearly degraded, if not eliminated. And I think you're going to hear the president focus on that today.
Marianne Marsh, we're just seeing pictures of President Trump speaking in Florida, and we will go to that, of course, if he says anything that is linked to the war or anything else significant. When you hear from the journalists, and you know, obviously the words that President Trump reportedly said, well, I think the war is very complete, pretty much, and yet still a focus on the supreme leader and regime change, because President Trump has made it very clear that he is not happy with the Iranian choice as it is at present.
I mean, Donald Trump's going to declare victory whether he has one in hand or not. And I think that's what, in this hour, we've seen. Someone looking for an exit ramp looks like he's going to take the exit ramp, even though he didn't change the regime or its leadership. That's Donald Trump. I mean, Donald Trump is famous for saying things that aren't so and trying to convince people that prices have gone down or this has happened or that has happened, when we know with our own eyes and ears that's not the case.
Would Israel, would Netanyahu be able to live with that? Because a threat to them, even if the nuclear capability is very much damaged, still remains.
And that's up to Israel at this point. I mean, the fact that Joe Biden turned down that push by Netanyahu to do what Donald Trump agreed to do, I think Trump realized the politics of this and the cost, literally and figuratively, was much higher than he ever expected. And Robert has outlined the midterm stakes. I still stand by my prediction here. I think we're going to win the Senate too. But the cost of the last 2 weeks alone is cataclysmic. So he never really outlined his goals very clearly going into this. He really didn't communicate with world leaders, Congress, or anyone else declaring what his objective was. So I think in Donald Trump's mind, when I say there's a victory, it's a victory, and I'm moving on to the next thing, whatever that might be.
Marianne Marsh, Robert Moran, thank you both very much indeed for being with us today on The Context USA here on BBC News. Very grateful to you both for your time. We'll see you soon. We're back in a minute.
One of the deadliest strikes in Iran was on this primary school in the southern city of Minab on the 28th of February, the first day of the war. Now, a new video has emerged, which gives us a much clearer insight into what happened. We verified this video published by the semi-official Iranian news agency MER. It shows a missile striking an Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps base next to the school. We've slowed the video down and zoomed in. Multiple weapons experts have told BBC Verify that this is a US Tomahawk missile, and it's worth saying Israel and Iran do not have Tomahawk missiles. As the camera pans to the right, you can see these large smoke plumes. They're rising above the area near the school, indicating it had been hit shortly before the Tomahawk struck the IRGC base. The missile hit the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps base near the Shajar Tayyibeh primary school. Neither the US nor Israel have accepted or denied responsibility for the attack. But the new video casts serious doubt on the claim by US President Donald Trump on Saturday that Iran was responsible for the strike on the school. President Trump said, "In my opinion, and based on what I've seen, that was done by Iran. They're very inaccurate, as you know, with their munitions." But expert analysis of video and satellite evidence suggests that the area came under a wave of US strikes. Experts say this, combined with the verified footage of the significantly damaged school building, makes the scenario of a single Iranian missile landing at the same time as these nearby targeted strikes highly improbable. Funerals were broadcast on Iranian state media last week. Aerial footage showed neatly lined rows of at least 100 marked or freshly dug graves. The incident was one of the deadliest strikes so far, which Iranian authorities say killed 168 people. At BBC Verify, we'll continue to investigate the strike as more evidence emerges.
This is BBC News. We're going to take you straight to the US and President Trump talking about
look
Iran.
At Soleimani, who was taken out, as you know that, but you know who. But if you look at Soleimani, the father of the roadside, you call it a roadside bomb because most people don't understand the different terms. It was where they plant bombs in roads as you drive by, happily drive by, the bomb goes off, and no matter how strong the armament, it just kills the people. Or you lose your arms, legs, and face. And those bombs got worse and worse, and he got happier and happier, and we took him out. That was a big thing because he was the head. It might have been a much different story. They may have been much more capable than they are had he lived, because he was capable. He was vicious, violent, and capable. But we got rid of him first term, and we did so many things. I mean, we've done so many things, but as you know, on Saturday, I traveled to Dover Air Force Base to be with the families of 6 fallen warriors as they returned to American soil. And I know that everyone in this room joins me in sending our prayers and eternal gratitude to the families of those great heroes. Those families are incredible families. Devastating to be. Hardest thing to do. You know, I've done it a lot. The hardest thing to do is to go to Dover, because Dover is where, for the most part, a lot of the fallen, the warriors, the great young people that have died in war, they seem to mostly go to Dover. They come home to Dover. Dover does a great job of handling things. They have men assigned to the family. They have men and women that are incredible assigned to the families. It's a beautiful thing, but it's also a very sad thing. But they all said one thing to me: make sure you win, sir. Make sure you win. They weren't playing games. They want to make sure. They said it. Everybody said it. They were separate, but everybody said the same thing. Make sure you win. We will. We've already won in many ways, but we haven't won enough. We go forward more determined than ever to achieve ultimate victory that will end this long-running danger once and for all. 47 years, it should have been done a long time ago. The world would have been a different place had some president had the courage to go and do it. They should have done it many, many times. They had many opportunities. The United States of America is the greatest and most exceptional nation in human history. and will not be threatened by evil terrorists and lunatics any longer. We just can't do that. And, you know, when I always talk about how great our nation is, I don't know, I don't consider our nation very great. For 4 years under Biden, we were a laughingstock all over the world. We were a laughingstock. So, you know, I say great, 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 but I don't know. When you look at what happened with so many different things, the open border, 25 million people, many of them very bad people pouring into our country with open borders that just said, come on in, makes no difference. They emptied their jails into our country. 11,888 murders, 50% of which murdered more than one person. The drug dealers came in, the mentally insane came in, they emptied their mental institutions, they emptied their insane asylum. That's a step above a mental institution. They emptied them all right into our country, and we've done a great job of doing what we've done. Think of it, we have the lowest crime rate that we've ever had. We have the lowest murder rate in 125 years, and we're saddled with all of the problems of the criminals that we let in. You know, look, they're smart people. I know the people that run those countries, every one of them, and they're all streetwise, very smart, and I would do exactly the same thing. They emptied their jails into our country. I said that was going to happen when I heard that they were having open borders. I didn't believe that they were going to happen. When I realized that they actually were going to have open borders, I said, we're going to have every person in jail. We're going to have every drug dealer. We're going to have all these countries all over the world. The Congo, they emptied their jails all the way from the Congo to all parts of South America, Asia.
Well, we are going to continue to listen to President Trump, but we're just going to come away from that and speak to Helena Humphrey, our correspondent in Washington. So some brief remarks there from President Trump. Helena.
Indeed, Geeta, essentially laying out his peace through strength strategy, which we have seen throughout the Trump administration. He's there at the Republican members' conference in Doral, Florida, before he returns to Washington. All eyes, of course, on what President Trump will say with regards to this war. Just to run you through some of the key comments, saying that the world respects the United States more than they have ever before, saying that the United States is crushing the enemy, but he said that the US will not relent until the enemy is defeated. Now, that is key because just ahead of that speech, we were hearing from President Trump in an interview with CBS News where he was saying that he believed the US was far, far ahead of schedule in this war, when previously he'd given a timeline of about 4 to 5 weeks. I think that was prompting many journalists to ask questions about that timeline, but seemingly Donald Trump there saying that we will not relent until the enemy is defeated. He also spoke about action from the Trump administration previously in this conflict. Remember that he had sought to justify this conflict going back 40 years, going back to 1979 and the hostage crisis, and he has said that Iran has done so many things to the US since then, including speaking about Soleimani. People may remember Soleimani. He was the leader of the elite Quds force who was assassinated in the first Trump administration in 2020, calling him the father of the roadside bomb. That is a way that President Trump often refers to Soleimani. And he was speaking about those US service personnel, 7 who have been killed in this conflict so far, and the dignified transfer at Dover over the weekend, saying that he had been speaking to the families and repeatedly they had said to him, essentially, make sure you win this conflict. And he says that because of that, they will continue, that they still have a ways to go. So again, really important in context of those comments to CBS News, when essentially President Trump had been saying that he believed that the US was way ahead of schedule when it comes to this war. So I think still for the time being, Geeta, it is very open-ended with regards to how long this conflict will last, and ultimately what is the end goal here for the Trump administration.
Yes, and he said they are winning in many ways, but not enough. And that message that we heard from CBS News obviously seems quite qualified now, even though there was a bit of a market reaction to that CBS News. We are, as you said, Helen, expecting to hear from President Trump further, taking journalists' questions shortly at a news conference. But President Trump saying that, clearly indicating it seems that there is still more to do.
Indeed, and what we heard in that CBS News interview is that he was talking about taking out the Air Force, he had said, the naval fleet, almost all of the missiles in Iran. That's not something that we've been able to independently yet verify at BBC News, but seemingly indicating that they were way ahead of schedule. But as you qualify there, Geeta, all of this comes with the backdrop of what we've seen on the markets today, when we've seen that significant reaction when it comes to the price of Brent crude, the benchmark crude, of course, index there going above at one point $120 a barrel. That is significant because it is the highest level in 4 years. When you take a look at gas prices here, the price at the petrol pump at one point above $3.48 per gallon. Again, the highest level that it has been in any Trump presidency. So those comments were made before the markets were closing. Clearly, I think President Trump wanting to calm any concerns on the markets, and of course with voters as well. I mean, recent polling showing, a PBS NPR poll showing 56% of Americans disapproving of the military strikes
Helen,
on
I'm just
Iran.
going to cut in and just take us back to President Trump speaking live in Florida.
They were looking to take over the Middle East because when you look, and we have pretty good proof, all of those missiles that were so stupidly aimed at Qatar, Saudi Arabia, UAE, they were all aimed at others, at countries that were sort of like, leave us alone. They were all right, they were sort of neutral, but they weren't doing it. All of a sudden, they're getting hit with missiles, and they could have gone one of two ways. They could have gone toward their side, like, we're with you, or they could have gone with our side, and they really went with our side, and they've helped us, and they've been a big force. But they got hit, but they were going to be hit with us. Had we not done the B-2 raid, and if we not done this one where we said, nope, it's time to go in, we have to go in, have no choice. Number one, if we didn't go in, they would have come in after us, because I see the Democrats trying to justify it, and they're failing because the voter on the street is saying, you got to be kidding. But I see where they're going, where they're always saying, no, there was no reason. Well, I'll give you the best reason of all. Within a week, if they were going to attack us, 100%. They were ready. They had all these missiles, far more than anyone thought, and they were going to attack us. But they were going to attack all of the Middle East and Israel, and if they had a nuclear weapon, they would have used it on Israel. And this was going to be a major attack. And they had all of those missile sites and all those launchers that we got rid of, about 80% of them right now, by the way. Got rid of most of it. You don't see it's died down to a trickle. There are very few launchers left. What our military has done is amazing. They wiped out almost 20%, maybe 22, 23%, but the rest are going very quickly. And the missiles have been largely knocked out. The drones have been knocked down, and we're hitting where they make the drones. We know them all, and we're knocking the hell out of that now where they manufacture the drones. A lot of work, a lot of brilliant work, but we're going to have a much safer world as soon as it's finished, and it's going to be finished pretty quickly. With the help of our House Republican majority, we passed the largest tax cuts in American history, and we have to keep talking about it. And with the great, big, beautiful bill, we delivered no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, and no tax on Social Security for our great seniors. And we did something else which is great that nobody ever
So
talks about.
President Trump saying there that they have got rid of many of the missiles and weapons capacity and the drone manufacturing capacity, and that this operation is going to be over pretty quickly, and talking there about the threat potentially from Iran, and that was part of the reason why they went in. Helena Humphrey was listening to that. Helena, what do you make of it? We've had a lot of reasons given by the administration as to why this operation happened, but obviously everyone looking now for signs from President Trump about when it will end.
give every child.
Indeed, there are voters here in the United States, Gulf countries, who are continuing to face strikes, essentially trying to read the tea leaves with whatever President Trump has to say. Is there an off-ramp here for a conclusion
This
of
dude
this conflict?
still has no
I think
plan.
at the beginning of this conflict, if
He
we
has
cast our
no
mind
plan.
back some 10 days, President Trump had called on the Iranian people, as we know, to rise up and to topple the regime. Since then, we'd heard on multiple occasions, including from the Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, saying that this is not a regime change war. And certainly, if you look at the events over the past weekend with the naming of a new leader, the son of the late Ayatollah, you can see perhaps not a regime change war. President Trump was asked about that at a press conference last week. What would be the worst outcome of this conflict? And he said if they replace the leader with someone who was, he said, as bad as before. But certainly I think what the administration seems to be honing in on is this idea of wiping out Iran's military capabilities whatsoever, not just when it comes to the nuclear program, but also when it comes to their full arsenal, so that they are not able to defend a potential nuclear weapon in the future. And I think that is why you are seeing now the president, a number of occasions today in that CBS interview, but also there at that press conference, implying that the US and Israel, through these strikes, have been able to extensively wipe out military capabilities, defense capabilities from the Iranians there.
Yes, and as far as we could gather there, President Trump was indicating that he felt that Iran might have been considering some sort of strike within a week, and that was part of the justification for this initial action.
Again, there have been differing rationales set forward from the Trump administration on that. There have been some consternation, including from President Trump's MAGA base, when his Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, had suggested that Israel was going to launch a strike, and that in doing so, US assets in the region would be hit in retaliation, and that is why the United States had joined with the Israelis. We then heard from President Trump saying, well, instead, it was based on a very good feeling, based on fact, is what his White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said, that Iran was going to launch a strike on Iran. So again, we've had conflicting accounts, conflicting justifications in all of this. But certainly what we see is President Trump often taking to the stage and going back to, 40 years essentially, saying that Iran has been a threat. And that is why this administration was the one, he says, that dared to take action.
Okay, Helena, we are keeping across President Trump's comments. We'll come back to you, of course, if he does anything further on this. But for now, thanks very much indeed. Well, 10 days on from the start of the conflict, and the economic repercussions are having, of course, an impact around the world. There's been turmoil in the stock markets, but US share prices rallied earlier today. Oil prices soared well over $100 a barrel for the first time in 4 years. They eased back only after G7 finance ministers said they were ready to release strategic oil reserves if necessary. They fell further in response to Mr. Trump's remarks. Let's go to our business correspondent, Michelle Fleury. So, Michelle, we're still digesting really what President Trump is saying here, but he is indicating that, in his view, this war will end at some point soon, saying it's going to be a short-term excursion. He said we've already won in many ways, but we haven't won.
No, hold on. Hold on.
Average, it's been quite a wild ride. It started off the morning down around 1%. It finished the session up 250 points. So in total, a swing of about 1.5% to close higher. And I think it sort of indicates the volatility of emotions as well, the range of emotions that investors are feeling. On the one hand, they started the week really with huge concerns that this might last much longer than previously had been anticipated. And they were looking at things like the long-term disruptions this could cause to the oil market, the ripple effects that might cause to the broader economy, at a time when voters in America have made it very clear that affordability is kind of front of mind. And of course, they were getting reminded of it daily each time they went to the gas pump, to the petrol station. Have a listen to these New York motorists.
I definitely am feeling the pinch. I travel a lot. I travel a lot for work in my car, and yes, this is very expensive. It went down for a while, but now, yeah, it's a lot to fill your tank. I think everybody's feeling a pinch everywhere. I think from tariffs to gas prices to our mental health with everything that's going on, I think it's more than just a pinch.
We work for construction, gas prices, we use machinery, heavy machinery, diesel, stuff like that. We definitely do see it, we feel it too. Especially, remember back then it used to be maybe $2.50 the gallon, and we've come a very long way from that.
And I think with national elections later this year, it was a reminder certainly to American politicians across the board that when it comes to conflicts in the Middle East and the disruption to oil supplies, it's something that hits people's wallets here pretty quickly.
Michelle Fleury, thanks very much indeed. Well, let's get more on all this. David Sandilow is a fellow at Columbia University Center on Global Energy Policy and served as Under-Secretary of Energy during the Obama administration and Assistant Secretary of State for Oceans, Environment and Science under Bill Clinton. Thank you very much for being with us. The indications from President Trump as to how long this war is going to continue are changing, really. They've changed quite a lot within the last hour, I'd say. I don't know if you're able to hear what he was saying, but he was saying that he felt the war could be finished pretty quickly, that he indicated they've had some successes in taking out the missile and drone sites, but obviously still some way to go. What's your assessment of where we are and what the impact is going to be?
I think the markets would appreciate consistent signals from the administration. The signals that we were just hearing were in part mixed. It's clear the president wants to send a signal that the war will be over soon, but at the same time, he's saying that the United States will not relent until there's victory. I think there's concern that it will be difficult for the president to claim victory given the situation in Iran with the former Supreme Leader's son taking over the reins. So we'll see in the days ahead. I think the administration would benefit from providing a clear statement of its objectives in this conflict, and then a clear assessment of what it will take before it considers the war to be done, not just a different message kind of day in and day out.
Yeah, I mean, President Trump said we've already won in many ways, but we haven't won enough. We go forward more determined than ever to achieve ultimate victory. How long do you think the White House has got before the knock-on effects, we've already seen significant effects, really just become too much?
Well, we've already seen significant energy price impacts, as you're saying. I mean, last week we saw the largest increase in oil future prices in a week ever. I think it's hard to speculate what this White House will do, but it's interesting to look at historical examples of oil price increases like this and what's happened in the wake of those increases. And one thing we find looking at history is that this type of event does tend to quicken the pace of developing alternative energy. Dating all the way back to the 1970s, when we had historic oil price spikes, that led to fuel economy standards in the United States, the development of nuclear power in France, a little while later, ethanol development in Brazil, and other developments around the world. And then just in the Ukraine crisis in 2022, when natural gas prices shot up to historically high levels, we saw the European Union develop renewables much faster. We saw Pakistan strikingly develop solar power much faster than it had over concerns about natural gas price volatility. So there's sometimes a short-term impact when countries shift from natural gas to coal because they need the energy security benefits of coal.
Sorry, y'all.
Alternative energy.
Okay, David Sandilow, I'm sorry we're out of time, but thank you very much indeed for being with us. Thank you. Well, one of the earliest strikes at the start of this war was on a primary school in the city of Minab in the south of Iran. The BBC's verified a video which shows an American missile striking a military base next to the school. Donald Trump has denied US involvement, saying from what he's seen, Iran was responsible. The authorities there say 168 people, mostly children, were killed in the school. Here's Melvin Thomas.
One of the deadliest strikes in Iran was on this primary school in the southern city of Minab on the 28th of February, the first day of the war. Now, a new video has emerged, which gives us a much clearer insight into what happened. We verified this video published by the semi-official Iranian news agency MER. It shows a missile striking an Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps base next to the school. We've slowed the video down and zoomed in. Multiple weapons experts have told BBC Verify that this is a US Tomahawk missile, and it's worth saying Israel and Iran do not have Tomahawk missiles. As the camera pans to the right, you can see these large smoke plumes. They're rising above the area near the school, indicating it had been hit shortly before the Tomahawk struck the IRGC base. The missile hit the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps base near the Shajar-e Taiba primary school. Neither the US nor Israel have accepted or denied responsibility for the attack. But the new video casts serious doubt on the claim by US President Donald Trump on Saturday that Iran was responsible for the strike on the school. President Trump said, "In my opinion, and based on what I've seen, that was done by Iran. They're very inaccurate, as you know, with their munitions." But expert analysis of video and satellite evidence suggests that the area came under a wave of US strikes. Experts say this, combined with the verified footage of the significantly damaged school building, makes the scenario of a single Iranian missile landing at the same time as these nearby targeted strikes highly improbable. Funerals were broadcast on Iranian state media last week. Aerial footage showed neatly lined rows of at least 100 marked or freshly dug graves. The incident was one of the deadliest strikes so far, which Iranian authorities say killed 168 people. At BBC Verify, we'll continue to investigate the strike as more evidence emerges.
Merlin Thomas there. Let's speak to Jasmine El-Gamal, founder and CEO of Avaros Strategies and former Pentagon Middle East advisor. Thanks very much for being with us. I do want to come on to what's happened in that school in a moment, but can I just first of all ask you about the comments that we've had from President Trump in the last hour or two? He's speaking live in Florida, saying the war will be, quotes, finished pretty quickly, and saying that within a week Iran were going to attack us 100%. They were ready. That's why they went in. But he's still indicating there's more to do. I just wonder what you make of those comments.
Thank you so much for having me. I mean, the president is doing what he's tried to do and trying to balance justifying entering into this war to the American people, and at the same time trying to reassure the American public and the markets that this is not going to last much longer. Obviously, you see alarm and panic both within the U.S. populace at rising gas prices, not really understanding why we went into this war, and also you've seen the markets reacting quite visibly to that as well. So what you just saw him doing there is trying to reiterate a justification for entering into this war, although that justification is not backed up by U.S. intelligence reports, who did not assess that Iran was about a week away from striking the U.S. preemptively. And he's also trying to reassure the markets and the voters that this is going to be over soon, which is also something he can't guarantee, as we don't know whether the Iranians will actually take that as an acceptable way to end the war, or if they will want to negotiate an end to the war where they have more say in the matter.
And I mean, he said that they took a little excursion, as he put it, and he said the war is very complete, pretty much. If the US and Israel did perhaps achieve further regime change, obviously they've said that Khamenei is still, you know, the indications are that he would still be a target for any future strikes. But if they did achieve getting some sort of new leader into Iran that they could deal with, that would be seen as a victory, presumably enough for them to pull out.
Presumably, but we also have to be careful not to entirely conflate U.S. and Israeli objectives here. It is true that for Israel and the Israeli Prime Minister, that regime change, irreversible regime change, is his objective and has been his stated objective for 40 years now. With the U.S., it's not quite that important to be able to say that they destroyed the whole regime. They just have to be able to say that they demilitarized it to the point where they can no longer pose a threat to the U.S. and its allies. So what you could be seeing here is President Trump trying to find an off-ramp to this conflict rather than get mired in further to say we did what we achieved what we set out to do. I told you I wanted to make them weaker. They are now weaker and we can go home.
Just briefly, I'm sorry we're nearly out of time, but the school question with verified video from the BBC indicating it was an American missile. Do you think the White House does have to release quickly the results of its investigation on that?
Of course, I would hope that the White House would release the results and apologize to the families of those school children.
Jasmine El-Gamal, thank you very much indeed for being with us. Thank you.
$19 million today. I said, has that ever been done? No, sir, it's a record, but 20 would sound better, right, Mike? Yes. He said, I'm going to give you $1 million. It's the first time I've done that. I never did it before. I never did it before. I never did it before. Now I'll be hit up by every political group, every Republican running. Sir, can I have some, give me a little cash. I'll have Emmer come up to me and say, how about a little cash for my campaign? I will no longer have the excuse that as president, anyway, no, but we had to hit the 20, right? We had to hit the 20. That was a hell of a thing. You beat it by a lot. You beat the record, the previous record by a lot. But I want to thank House Republicans for passing another common sense measure. To me, the easiest of all, the Save America Act to protect our sacred American. Look at this. Look. It's the easiest thing we have. I can't. It's the easiest thing we have. Now, the problem is you call it the Save Act. And nobody knew what the hell the Save Act. Have you been seeing? I've been working overtime the last month. It's called the Save America Act. And I saw Schumer yesterday. We will stop Save America. He's getting killed. They can't do it. And then the things within the Save America are so good. But just the title. So we had that with MAGA. Greatest name of all time. Make America Great Again. MAGA. It just worked. You know, I had something, Keep America Great. It was good, but it didn't have that MAGA. You know, there was nothing you could see. I had CAG. And CAG, I said, you know, no longer, that's not good. But MAGA is great, and we'll always respect MAGA. We love MAGA. We're never going to let you down with MAGA. But this one's even better if you think about it. This says, America. We're going to save America. The Save America. How can they fight us? The Save America Act. And I've watched them. I watched Schumer, who's horrible. What a horrible politician. He is now a Palestinian officially. He is registered as a Palestinian. He's taken the biggest turn of any human being I've ever seen. He's gone from totally pro-Israel to totally
that he's just saying these words to affect the stock market. We have seen him do that before, and maybe that's actually what is at play here, is wanting the stock market to go back up.
Yeah, and there's certainly significant concern.
This is ABC News, by the way.
Selena, Stephen, Louis, and Elizabeth, thank you all for your time. Coming up here on ABC News Live, we are awaiting that news conference from President Trump, set to get underway any minute now. And we, of course, will bring that to you live as soon as it happens. So stay with us.
Whenever, wherever news breaks, it's so important to always remember that lives are changed. Here in London, in Buffalo, Uvalde, Texas, Edinburgh, Scotland, from Poland once again tonight. Thank you so much for streaming with us, Ukrainian refugees here in Warsaw. Do you think you'll ever be able to go back home? We're heading to a small community outside of Mexico City. Splintered houses and splintered lives, and the magnitude of the devastation. We're streaming ABC News Live. reporting from Rolling Fork, Mississippi, Santa Fe, New Mexico, Raleigh, North Carolina, the U.S. Capitol, Mayfield, Kentucky, Minneapolis, Mexico, Tongass National Forest, Alaska. Getting you behind the stories as they happen, giving you a front row seat to our world as it plays out in real time, live. ABC News Live Prime. We'll take you there.
Stream ABC News Live weeknights, America's most honored streaming news program, only on ABC News Live. Streaming free right now wherever you stream your news.
When I was little watching American Idol, I was sure that I was going to find a way onto that stage. This audition is the first page of my story.
I believe in myself.
If I could do this,
I belong here.
holy crap, I'm auditioning for American Idol.
Wow.
Beautiful.
That's what it's all about. That was impressive.
Okay, we want to know, who are the people in your state that make such a big difference?
Come on now. We all know someone who does so much.
And we want to celebrate them with you. So scan this QR code or go to goodmorningamerica.com. Tell us about them. We're coming to all 50 states in 50 weeks to celebrate the best of what makes America beautiful.
I'm Marcus Moore in Doha, covering the war in the Middle East. Wherever the story is, we'll take you there. You're streaming with ABC News Live.
Welcome back. I'm Stephanie Ramos in New York. More coverage now on President Trump set to hold a news conference any moment on the war with Iran. The president speaking from his golf club in Doral, Florida. This as he signals the war could soon be over and oil prices drop back below $100 a barrel, easing concerns on Wall Street. The president still not backing down from his attacks on Iran, rejecting the country's new supreme leader and leaving open the possibility of sending in U.S. ground forces if needed. I want to bring back ABC News senior White House correspondent Selena Wang, who is in Florida traveling with the president, ABC's Stephen Portnoy, and ABC News senior Pentagon reporter Louis Martinez. Selena, I want to start with you. President Trump, just a short time ago, referred to the war as, quote, a little excursion. And he seems to be really strong. He feels strongly about signaling that this could be over soon. What have you heard there on the ground and traveling with the president's team?
Yes, Stephanie. Well, we're hearing some conflicting messages from the president. So when he takes this stage any moment now to address the American people, the big question is how long is this going to last for? What exactly is the end game? Because you'll remember that the president initially said he wasn't going to put a timeline on this. He had said maybe 4 to 5 weeks, but then he said as long as it will take. Now the president's saying that we're very close to the end here, that it's, quote, very complete. But at the same time, the president has said there will be no deal with Iran until they get unconditional surrender. Just moments ago, speaking in front of House Republican leadership, the president said, quote, we won't relent until the enemy is totally and decisively defeated. But that's not what we're seeing. And not only is the Iranian regime still intact, despite that very forceful set of U.S. and Israeli strikes, the late Ayatollah's son, who is also a hardliner, has now been appointed the next supreme leader. In addition to that, Iran still maintains its stockpile of enriched uranium. The president not rolling out boots on the ground or sending in a team of special forces to acquire that enriched uranium deep underground. So major questions about just how long this is going to go on for. We've also learned from the Kremlin that Vladimir Putin and President Trump had spoken today. This comes after we have learned from sources that Russia was providing intelligence about American targets.
Answered questions. And Stephen, let's talk about some of the Americans who are in the Middle East. The State Department reporting some progress in the race to bring Americans back to the U.S. from the Middle East. What are you hearing?
Some 36,000 Americans have come back safely, according to a news release from the State Department today, up from 32,000 yesterday. And what the State Department is telling us is that there's now more availability on the charter flights that the State Department is operating than there is demand for those seats. Now, last week, in the immediate aftermath of the start of hostilities in Iran, our colleague Karen Travers put the question directly to the president in the Oval Office. Why, she asked, did the United States not prepare in advance to evacuate Americans who might be trapped or otherwise want to get out of the region, might not be able to take commercial flights because so many of the carriers stopped running in and out of, for example, Abu Dhabi or Qatar, other major transit hubs? And the answer the president gave was, it happened very quickly.
Yeah, so many Americans trying to get out of there. Louis, the president has said U.S. ground forces could possibly go into Iran eventually to seize the country's uranium. How likely do you think that is?
Well, Stephanie, right now the president has said he has not made a decision on that, and if he said if it is needed, it would be far off in the future. But as Stephen and Selena have both said, the thing that keeps coming up is the use potentially of special operations forces to seize and acquire the enriched uranium that now lies underneath those facilities that were bombed by the United States last June. So the use of those special operations forces comes because they would be potentially the best trained. They would have the resources needed to go in for quick insertion, or potentially even for a longer insertion if needed, if the goal here is to acquire the enriched uranium that lies underground. Another option potentially could be that they would go in and essentially destroy what remains of those 3 nuclear facilities, and then that way no one could get access to it.
All right, Louis, thank you very much. And our thanks to Stephen and Selena there in Florida. And of course, we will bring you that announcement, that press conference with the president as soon as it happens. Now let's turn to Trita Parsi. I want to bring her in, the co-founder and executive vice president of the Quincy Institute, an ABC News contributor, and former Homeland Security Assistant Secretary Elizabeth Newman. Thank you both. Elizabeth, I want to start with you. What do you most want to know as we await to hear more from President Trump?
I suppose I would love to hear from the president what that big strategic objective is. We know that the military has very practical targets and military objectives that they want to accomplish, but I would like to understand the bigger why, what we're hoping the military, by accomplishing those military objectives, will eventually lead to change. Are we looking for getting rid of the clerics and the IRGC and freeing up space so the Iranian people can choose for themselves their own leaders? Or is this simply about making sure that the nuclear weapons can never be used again? Those two things are actually very different and tell us in some ways what kind of military capability we need to have and how long this war might take in order to achieve those objectives. The concern I have is we keep hearing different things from different parts of the federal government, from the National Security Advisor and Secretary of State and the Secretary of War. So I'd like to hear from the president himself, what are we hoping to achieve here?
Hopefully there's some clarification there when he takes the podium. Trita, President Trump called this a short-term excursion. What stands out to you the most about this potential long-term war?
Well, I think it's quite clear. This war has been a failure. It should never have been started in the first place. It was done on completely unjustified grounds. There was no imminent threat. And Trump is now faced with a situation in which a bad decision is risking to turn into disaster. And that's part of the reason I think that he may be starting to lay the ground for claiming some sort of a victory, whether that victory is really convincing or not. But I think it would be better for him to go down that path and actually end this rather than trying to turn this completely unjustified war into a victory. This is exactly what we did in Iraq and in Afghanistan and in other places in which we were constantly chasing some sort of an illusion of a victory before we were willing to pull out. And in Afghanistan, it took 20 years and it was a complete disaster. So I think in that sense, it's the right thing to do this. However, I'm not so sure that he's going to succeed because the Iranians have a say in this as well. And my read of the Iranians, particularly mindful of the decision they made yesterday about the new supreme leader, is that they don't think that this is over.
Many experts fearful of a repeat of history here. Elizabeth, Israel says it's now conducting ground operations in southern Lebanon targeting Hezbollah. How do you see that particular situation playing out?
Well, certainly if you look at this through the lens of Israel's objectives, they have been trying to rid themselves of all Iranian proxies near them, whether it's in Gaza or Lebanon, and that is a key thing that Netanyahu has suggested is an objective for him to secure Israel, to make sure there's no repeat of an October 7th attack. Now, whether or not they're going to be successful at that, I suppose that's a different question. But that is kind of what their objective has been, is to rid themselves of all of these proxies that have been making their lives difficult over the last few decades.
Trying to do so for quite some time now. And Trita, let's talk about Iran's new supreme leader. How do you see Iran's new supreme leader factoring into this stage of the war?
I think we have to be very frank that almost no one on the outside knows much about him. He's never even given a single interview before this decision was made. But I think we can be confident that the intent here is to signal complete and utter defiance against the United States, particularly after Trump said that he would not accept Mojtaba Khamenei as the new supreme leader, as if Trump has a say in this. This is a person whose father, mother, wife, and child was just killed by the Israelis. So I don't think he is likely to be in a particularly reconciliatory mood. And I think this is a signal from them that they are not going to back down. They're certainly not going to surrender. And as a result, the fear is, of course, that this war is going to drag on.
Absolutely. We will see what the president announces here shortly. We, of course, will bring that to everyone here on ABC News Live. Trita Percy and Elizabeth Newman, thank you so much. Coming up here on ABC News Live, questions are spiking about the possibility of a U.S. military draft. We're separating fact from fiction on this, and that's coming up. Plus, Timothée Chalamet is hoping to pirouette his way out of a PR nightmare. The actor pointing to ballet and opera as dying art forms, and the internet is not having it.
I was sent to prison for 110 years.
Pender was convicted in 2002 for the murder of her 2 roommates.
I knew that I was going to die in prison. And then one day, I thought, I bet I can get out of here.
Investigators say Sarah Pender is on the loose and dangerous.
Run, Sarah, run.
She has a Charles Manson-like ability to manipulate people.
I'm real dangerous with my charming smile. I begged her to turn herself in because they had orders to shoot to kill.
I feel like I'm on the scent. This could be it. This could be the one. I've never had to shoot anybody, but that first bullet had her name on it.
Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. Holy this is it.
Girl on the Run, the hunt for America's most wanted woman, only on Hulu and Hulu on Disney+.
Spencer Pratt is the kind of person who has nothing left to lose. Spencer Pratt first comes on the hills as the boyfriend of Heidi Montag.
Whether people loved them or hated them, they wanted to watch them together.
You've gotten political. You are the self-proclaimed guy that people love to hate, and yet you now want them to vote for you for mayor. Please don't tell me you're running for mayor to boost your book sales.
Hated on the Hills. Spencer Pratt rewritten, now streaming on Disney+ and Hulu.
Hi guys, we're on our way to meet the men. I'm not the normal bachelorette.
Taylor Frankie Paul, the Mormon influencer everyone's talking about.
I'm ready to find love. Here's that, yeah? My rise to fame has been sudden.
You're riding the lightning right now.
I do believe I was gifted this for another chapter in my life. Wish me luck. Bye.
RJ Decker, I'm a private investigator.
I'd like to ask you a few questions about what happened yesterday.
You here to offer me another job?
Maybe we dive in together and find something that connects.
What happened to your eye?
It's complicated.
Welcome back. A look back at some of our top stories. Stocks recovering today as oil prices fall and investors rally in response to a new suggestion from President Trump that the war with Iran could soon be over. All 3 major indices ending in the green. The price of crude also dropping back below $100 a barrel after futures soared over the weekend. The U.S. says it has intercepted encrypted communications believed to be from Iran that may serve as an operational trigger for sleeper assets outside the country. The government now warning law enforcement to increase monitoring of suspicious radio activity. But the alert notes there is no current operational threat that is tied to a specific location. And big delays at some major U.S. airports as the partial government shutdown causes chaos for spring break travelers. For the second time in 6 months, TSA officers are being forced to work without pay, prompting more agents to call out sick. Police here in New York City say they are investigating a possible ISIS-inspired terror attack in Manhattan. Investigators say 2 explosive devices were thrown into an anti-Muslim protest on Saturday. The attack took place outside Gracie Mansion, where New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani lives. 2 suspects are now facing federal terrorism charges, and the NYPD commissioner, Jessica Tisch, says the department is doing everything it can to keep New Yorkers safe. ABC News Chief Investigative Correspondent Aaron Katersky joins me now in studio with the latest. Aaron, great to see you. So what are we learning about these 2 suspects?
These are 2 teenagers from Bucks County, Pennsylvania, Steph, who, according to police, drove into the city on Saturday, went directly to Gracie Mansion, where this protest against Muslims was unfolding right outside the first Muslim mayor of New York's official residence, and ended up hurling one device that turned out to be an improvised explosive. Then you see one teen handing another a second device. He ignites it, runs down the sidewalk, and is tackled before he can hurl it at protesters. At first, these were thought to be smoke bombs, but the police said, Steph, that these actually were improvised explosives. One of them tested positive for TATP, a highly volatile substance used in attacks around the world.
And these 2 suspects are being charged with federal terrorism charges. Their lawyers are now asking that they be placed in protective custody. So what else are we hearing from their lawyers, and also what happens next?
Well, one of the lawyers for one of them, Amir Balad, said he's 18, doesn't really know what he's doing, but police said that that's just not true, that he had told them he was inspired by ISIS, that they watched ISIS propaganda videos on their cell phone, and Balad allegedly told police that he wanted to carry out an attack bigger than the Boston Marathon bombing, and lamented that that attack had only caused 3 casualties. The defense is trying to downplay them as troubled teens, but prosecutors and the police are adamant that they had a very sinister goal in mind.
And no one was injured, right, outside Gracie Mansion during this incident?
No one was injured. The devices, though, were still smoking as police rushed in to get them away from people, to tackle these guys and get them into custody almost immediately. They were in New York less than an hour from the time they crossed the George Washington Bridge and ended up under arrest on the Upper East Side of Manhattan.
Incredible. Fortunately, no one was hurt. Aaron Katersky, thank you so much, Aaron. Still ahead here.
I'm going to go ahead and end this here. Thank y'all for being here. Like, share, subscribe. See y'all later. Peace.